Well, it's 8:36, so are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Well, I have a little baby, so if you see me looking down, it's not because I'm looking at myself, it's because I'm nursing a child. So, I would say welcome to the NCM, the Natural Christian Mommas Homeschool Q&A. Please, 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 just if you have questions, type them in the chat and we will get to them as soon as we can. We have a list of questions that have been submitted. And yeah, we just wanted to introduce ourselves quickly and thank you for being here. I'm Jackie. I am the founder of NCM and one of the admins on the team. I have a baby who is having a hard time. And there's the baby. And I have 4 kids, and my oldest is 7. And I don't even know what we do. I don't know what our official homeschool method would be. I guess the word is eclectic, is what everybody else says. Eclectic? I don't know. We do like an unschooling, child-led type method. So I'm Jackie, and we will go around. Shelby, would you like to introduce yourself next? Oh, wait. Sorry, I forgot something. My bad.
Fine.
One piece of advice. So we're going to introduce ourselves, our kids, how many kids we have or whatever, the method we use, and one piece of advice. And my piece of advice would be not to compare yourself to other people. You will see that all of us homeschool differently. Our kids are different. Our lives are different. Our goals for homeschooling are slightly different. Our children's needs are different. And so like if I start comparing myself to Caitlin or Bethany, I'm going to feel like I'm failing because I'm doing something different, right? So I would just say don't compare, right? The Bible tells us that too. So don't compare, just figure out what works for you. Now I might look at something Nicole does and say, wow, that's really great for me. And I might adopt that for our family, but I might not. So Shelby, your turn.
Okay. So my name is Shelby, and I have 4 kids, but only 3 of them are schooling right now. One just turned 6 last December, so she is just now kind of hopping on the train with us. We unschool, hugely unschool, and basically that's just us learning through life and applying lessons all throughout the day. And not really having this strict set schedule of we're going to do this at this time, we're going to do this subject at this time, we're going to school from this month to this month. It's basically a continuous lifestyle of learning. I forgot what the rule or the suggestion would probably be to erase the word behind from your schooling knowledge vocabulary. There is no such thing as a child who is behind, because levels of learning is a traditional school of thought. So just apply where your child is at and school them there, not at any other level, not at any expectation. Forget the word behind from your vocabulary.
Perfect. Thank you, Shelby. Bethany, could you introduce yourself?
Hi there. I am Bethany. I'm also one of the admins here. I am a mom of 6, and my kids, their ages range from 1 all the way up through 19. So I do have a child who went through homeschool and is now in college, and by the way, is on the president's list in her college. So that's pretty exceptional there. And yeah, we're probably eclectic homeschoolers. I think that that's the best way to describe us. I don't like using one word to describe us. We kind of pull from a lot of different areas, and depends on my mood for the day. And an advice that I would have for any homeschooling or new homeschooling mom is first to breathe, and is second to stop recreating the public school within your home, because your home is not a public school classroom. Your home is your home, and therefore your education needs to reflect that. And that is one of the most beautiful things about homeschooling.
Thank you, Bethany. Lauren, could you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Lauren Hall. Been a mod for, I don't even know how long now, a few years, a year or two. I don't know. I've been in NCHIM since like the beginning. So anyhow, I am also kind of an eclectic Charlotte Mason inspired, largely unschool. We really vary. We've looked more radical unschoolers to being far more Charlotte Mason. We definitely pull from a lot of different areas. So I really let my life situation and what's going on kind of reflect what our school looks like at that time. So I am schooling. I have 5 children. I am pregnant with our 6th, and 4 of them are schooling age. Really kind of only 3. One is just now about to be 6, and so we're starting to kind of include him more in more of the, if I wanted to say formal, I don't really want to say formal, any formal lessons. But we really are more of life learners. So it's kind of an all year round, involving them in what we're doing and showing them, how that applies. So my advice for all homeschoolers normally is find what method works for you. Take all of the homeschooling method quizzes, and kind of going back to what Jackie said, don't compare yourself. There's no right way to homeschool. There's just not one. You can do this how it makes it fit your family, your schedule. You can schedule at night if you need to, or school at night if you need to. You do not have to start in the morning if you're not a morning person. So make it fit your life and find, what methodology works for you and your kids.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for that. I agree with all of that. All the advice so far has been pretty good. I'm like, yes. So it's good. Nicole, can you introduce yourself?
Right. Hi, I'm Nicole and I'm a mod at NCM. I have 5 kids and 2 are homeschooling age. 1 is coming into homeschooling age. And we are largely unschoolers also, nature inspired, wild schooling. We do a lot of unit studies depending on what the child is interested in. And my advice is if it's not working, to change the environment. Take it outside, take it to another room, play a board game instead to learn the subject. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to look like a worksheet. It doesn't have to look like public school. It can look like what works for your family.
Absolutely. Thank you. Caitlin, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I have 3 kids. 2 of them are schooling age, and I'm a toddler. I would call our homeschooling books and arts based. I wouldn't even say eclectic because I don't use a whole bunch of different methods. I literally just stick to books and art, and that's how it is a daily life for us and everything. My only tip, I guess, is even while homeschooling your kids, don't forget that this is a learning opportunity for yourself as well. You want to be constantly learning and growing yourself. Your kids will witness you reading and studying and growing in your own subjects, and it will inspire them to grow more. So whether it's an academic study or herbalism or writing or history, theology, or whatever it is, pick something you love yourself and keep growing in that, educate yourself in that, and let your kids see you doing that. Because how can we teach our kids to be lifelong learners and love learning if they don't see us learning too? So find your inspiration and stick with it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Caitlin. One of the things that I was thinking about when Lauren was talking is that you can pick a method, but your kids might want something different than what you want. And one kid might do well with Charlotte Mason, another kid might do well with more classical schooling, and others might do better with unschooling. So that's the other thing too, is you might have an idea of what you want to do, but your kids have a different idea. So, Angela, can you introduce yourself next?
Hi guys, I'm Angela. I have one son. He's going to be 6 next week. So we are just kind of moving into the formal of our schooling, but we've been kind of doing stuff for the last 3 years, very play-based. You'll find that I am a firm unschooler, child-led learning, interest-based homeschooler. My son does have some additional kind of special needs, so that makes things fun in adapting to his needs versus mine. And my advice is, guys, please, I am begging you, stop asking about curriculum. Take time, de-school. We'll touch on de-schooling. Take some time to de-school. Trust us. Like, if you take the time now to invest in de-schooling, you guys will catch up at the end of the year. I promise. So de-school, take some online surveys, figure out what your teaching style is, figure out what your child's learning style is. Then then do a few things, like pull from some different styles, figure out what the way that your child actually learns, and then come to us and we'll talk about curriculum. You have to do those things first, because I'm a type A. I like boxes. I like lists. You guys will probably see me break out my planner at some point and you will laugh at me. But my son laughs at my lists and my check boxes. That's just not him. So I have to meet him where he's at. So stop asking about curriculum, de-school, research the methods. Then let's come back and talk about how to teach.
That's awesome. Thank you. And that's nothing against,
Amen.
yeah, right. And that's nothing against curriculum. That's just, there's a time and a place, and you got to start, you can't run before you can
Step
walk.
one.
Exactly.
Curriculum is not your step one, or you're going to waste a ton of money and fun, and that was not how you wanted to school.
And we want, honestly, when I say, guys, don't ask us about curriculum, right at this moment, I want to save you guys money. I don't want you going out and throwing $400 at some of these box curriculums that promise to have your child getting into Harvard at 12 years old. You can throw money at that, but that might not work for your child. So if you do the things that we're telling you to do, we're going to save you money, and you're going to have a happier experience.
Talitha, your turn.
Hey everybody. So my name's Talitha. I've been a moderator here at NCM for I think it's like a year or something. But I'm a mom of 3. My oldest is 8. Then I have a 6.5-year-old. And then I have a toddler who's 2.5 and very busy. But I've been homeschooling. I started homeschooling my oldest when she was about 4. So we started really early, and I started off just doing what the moms around here did, and I started a certain curriculum and a certain style, and I just figured out pretty quickly, it took me about a year to figure out that wasn't what fit my children best. So I've kind of hopped around a little bit, but I adore the style of Charlotte Mason. I would call myself, if that's what I wanted to put a name on something, I would follow that. But I've really been trying to embrace a lot of child-led learning this year, especially with our families going through a lot of huge transitions. And so that's really worked well for our family this year. And it's taught me a lot about my children and about myself. So my piece of advice, I guess I would give to other moms or dads, whoever's doing the homeschooling, is invest in a printer. Because I just print all the things. So if you have the money and the finances to invest in a printer, I would invest in a printer. And also, one of the most helpful things I found out this year is like asking your children what they want to learn. Like you would be surprised what they will say. Like one of my girls said she wanted to learn how to cut down a tree, which I thought was hilarious. But it has to be child appropriate for their age and stuff. But just the things they come up with really surprise me. So don't be afraid to ask your children like what they're interested in and what they want to learn about. So
thank you so much. And if anybody watching, like if you have questions, if you're watching on Facebook, just post in the comments and we will get to them. And then also here, if you're in our Zoom, just post in the chat and we will definitely answer them. I have a list of questions that people have already submitted. So we're going to start by going through them. I do agree, Talitha, like, you can see the thing is like, I'm an unschooler because I really like child-led learning. But you don't have to be an unschooler to do child-led learning. So I think that's awesome. That's awesome. I did the goal thing. I asked my kids too what goals they wanted to do, like what they wanted to do this year. One kid said he wanted to read. So that was cool. I was like, all right, cool. A lot easier to teach a kid to learn how to read when they want to learn versus being like, it's time to read, kid. The other one wants to learn about weapons. So I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like yet, but yeah, they tell you what they want to learn. So we'll start with the first question. Like we kind of touched on some different methods. There's so many methods. I mean, if you just type in methods of homeschooling in Google, you'll get a bunch. And we can even share later the quizzes. There are some quizzes you can do to figure out which type of homeschooling method might work best for your family. So if you're interested in that, just let us know and we can share that later. So what are some good goals to have for homeschooling? Like if you guys had to sum up, maybe one or two of you can tell us, or three of you can tell us, what is your goal for homeschooling? I guess Angela wants to tell us. Go for it.
So so we put together a product list of products that each of us love. And one of the products that I added to the product list that we will get out to you guys is a parenting book. Jesus the Gentle Parent. Because my ultimate goal in homeschooling is for my son to have a firm foundation in Christ. And I don't care if he grows up and goes to an Ivy League school. If he doesn't know Jesus, I have failed as both a teacher and a mother. And so that is my primary focus for my homeschool.
That's awesome. Does anybody else have any? I'm sure we all have similar goals, like we're Christians. So I think that's awesome. Go ahead.
I think that our goal is always to just make sure that we're not just pumping facts into our children and that they're actually developing a love and a hunger for learning. So like we really learn through conversation. Like I said, we learn all day long. So any opportunity that can be a homeschool lesson turns into a lesson because we want them to hunger for that knowledge, right? So something as simple as finding a bug they've never seen before, you can then literally turn that into a day's worth of lessons in multiple subjects because they can now take pictures of the bug. Cool, you're doing photography and that's a skill or a trade. Then you can write a short story about a bug, and then you're practicing handwriting and grammar, and then you can do a science project on this bug and list the facts about him. And it's literally as simple as that, finding a bug and turning it into multiple subjects because the kid loves it. Like he's so excited about this bug and he doesn't even realize that you've now made a whole school day because you've let him do it, let him love learning about it. So if anything, for my children, I want to make sure that they are hungry to learn more for whatever crosses their path in life.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So we want our kids to love Jesus, and we want our kids to have a lifelong love of learning, to love to learn for their whole life. And I think Caitlin touched on that too, with us continuing to learn and to grow is a really, just like following Jesus, we need to model what we want for our kids. So does anybody have anything else to add, or do we want to go to the next question?
I think those two were always that it would be, that they love Jesus and they know his word, that they have a love of learning, and that they are forever students, and that they're strong readers. And those are my three goals. And I make sure that all of the things I'm doing for homeschooling line up and fit to that trajectory. So I think setting your goals before you, like we're going back, before you look at a curriculum, even before you look at a methodology, set your goals.
Well, and oftentimes I think people's goals are, okay, well, I need to keep them on track for the school, or I need them to learn to count to 50, which is important. Like none of those goals are small or unimportant, but having a big overarching goal is really, really important for us as homeschoolers. So, okay. So, I don't know why she's so fussy, guys.
I think Bethany, were you raising
Yeah.
your hand?
Yeah, so one thing I always say is setting your overall goals as a homeschool is really important, casting that vision of what you want your homeschool to look like. And then really we need to be setting yearly goals or having yearly visions, because not every year is going to look the same and not every child is the same. So if you have multiple children at home, year to year is going to be different, and sometimes our years look very different. My year this year looks incredibly different than what it looked like last year, and my goals are 100% different this year than what they were last year. So it's something that we really need to reevaluate, and sometimes we need to stop in January and reevaluate those goals too, because life changes and our kids change and we change. And I think part of it is as parents, we get to know our children more, and their learning styles and what works for them, or what goals need to be a part of their life. So I did want to add that, because I think it's an important thing that we recognize that, and we're flexible with that.
Absolutely. So one question that we received was, my daughter just turned 4 and is already reading, which is pretty great. That's awesome. I'm not sure how to encourage her love of learning without burning her out. Looking at curriculum that is just at the level she is seems like it would burn us both out quickly. Are there resources that do some of the teaching for you? My daughter doesn't enjoy having me teach her and actually does better with independent learning, watching videos, educational games, etc. We do incorporate basic learning into daily life, but she just wants to do more than that. So, Nicole, did you have anything to add to that or respond to that?
So we started reading really early as well. We kind of pushed it because I was one of those parents that thought, at 3 we had to start reading and all of that. So my kids were reading at 3 and 4, and it was great. I thought I was doing everything right, but we quickly got burnt out. Like, that is very accurate to what we experienced. And it wasn't worth it at that point, because yes, they could read, but they didn't like to read. And so we started doing a lot more read aloud story time and made it fun. We did Narnia, Boxcar Children, a lot of different like chapter books. And my kids really like OutSchool. They like doing lessons online where they have another teacher, and it can be, a funny subject that they're still doing math, but they're counting Skittles, or like they're counting other things. So yeah, we really like that, and that was what we had to do. We had to like de-school basically for a few years so that we were not burnt out anymore. We were figuring out how they learn and how I teach best. So yeah, definitely. I think you're on the right trajectory of noticing that, yes, the reading is great, but you definitely want to slow down. Unless they're pushing you to keep going, then, you also want to encourage the growth as it's going. I think that was basically what I had in mind.
Yeah, I think you answered that well. Absolutely.
I would love to add something to that. Is one, I just want to congratulate you that you're already noticing it ahead of time. Like, it's a wise mama that will say, "Oh wait, on this trajectory, I'm gonna get burned out." So I just want to applaud that introspection. And I think that it's important when we notice that our kids are really excelling in something, our mama heart gets all excited and we want to throw all of the things at them to grow that. But we have to remember that there's an emotional age there as well. And there's a attention span there as well. And so just because their mind is able to do it doesn't mean that their whole person is able to keep moving forward. And so it's okay to do things that feel lower than their capability for a time when they're so young.
Can I just add one more thing into that?
There's a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions.
I know. I'm sorry. I just want to encourage you, Mom, because it is so important for your child to be hearing and being in your physical presence of reading. Apps are great. Media is great. There's a time and a place for screens, but there is nothing that replaces that person-to-person interaction. And especially when it comes to literacy, when your child is seeing and hearing and feeling you read to them, that is so important. And don't give that up. And if she's resistant, I would stop all screens, honestly, with reading. So that's just like on a personal thing, because it is very important from person to person that we're learning to read versus screen to person. So that's my quick side note.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I think that was there are some really good apps and educational games, but I do agree that reading, like having us read to our kids is really important. And I also wanted to say, if your kid is resistant to you teaching them, instead of teaching them, you need to help them learn. And I heard that quote, or I don't know what the quote actually said, but just that idea, I heard it a few years ago. And when we teach, it's from us. The perspective is on us and what we're doing or not doing. But when we are helping our children learn, it's all about them. How do they learn best? What do they need from us? The perspective shift is different. So that might help too. Okay, the next question is, we are learning to read, and it seems to be a major part of the curriculum. She's using My Father's World. My daughter is struggling with putting sounds of more than one letter together, even though she knows individual letter sounds. Should we pause, or should we continue on with me helping her every step of the way? She's excited to learn to read, but just has not had the click yet. So I'd love for us to talk about the click, because I know some of us, our children, because the next question is actually, how do I teach my child to read? So I think that we can kind of combine these questions, because I know that some of us have children that read at 3 or 4, and some of us, it took our kids till 8, 9-ish. So if we could just kind of talk about, how do we help our kids? How do we teach them to read? And let's talk about that click, what that looks like. So whoever wants to go for it.
I can go. I can speak on this. Yeah, my oldest daughter, my oldest biological daughter, rather, she was sounding out words at the age of 4, and it seemed to me like, oh, she's reading, she's getting it, and it did not progress from there until she was 8 years old. So every step of the way, it was a huge struggle to get her to put the sounds together, blend, and have fluid reading, while her comprehension was extremely high. And so there's a couple things that happened. And the first thing that we discovered was that we had a little bit of learning differences going on. And that's its whole thing. But the second thing is that it doesn't matter how much that we pour into our children. If they are not ready to learn to read, they're not ready. And so we can't force that. You can't force the click. The best thing you can do is to guide. So she's excited about the curriculum. I would keep going forward. You're only 4 weeks into it. However, after a few months, if you are not seeing a progression, I would stop doing that curriculum and I would do something else, or even no curriculum, and just making it a fun thing, or finding out what works for her. I know the Logic of English is really, really a good program, especially for those struggling. I would never say a 4-year-old is struggling. In fact, I wouldn't even do a curriculum with a 4-year-old. So those are just some thoughts that I have there. But don't be discouraged. It's been 4 weeks. So and the click, I am convinced the click will happen, and every kid is different, and it's not something that you can rush or force.
Yeah, I want to add my oldest son, he was, is, but at a very young age was just extremely bright, and I saw so much potential. And he was my first, and I was an excited homeschooling mom. And I, without even realizing, I pushed so hard at his analytical mind. He was really good at sounding out, like he knew this letter and he knew this letter and he knew this letter, but he got really confused because he was so analytical, and A didn't always say sometimes like it was like the fact that a letter had multiple sounds got really confusing, the long and the short and all of those things. And so I kept going, you can get this. He was memorizing books without actually reading them. He would just memorize this whole book. And so I thought he was reading, and then he would see this word somewhere else. And I was like, you just read that book. And it was like, it took me a while to realize what was really going on. And so it was logic of English. Actually, I took a year and a half off, and all we did was just read aloud. Like, I read to him, that was it. I had pushed him so hard that he had shut down and he was not ready to learn anymore. And I think that was my biggest homeschooling mistake of my 12-year homeschooling. And so I just completely stopped off all reading lessons at all. And then I found Logic of English when we were ready to jump back in. And that was it's probably the only curriculum you'll ever hear me just sing praises over for everyone. Like, it's just absolutely amazing to really teach that, especially either dyslexic or the really highly analytical kids, the very just really smart kids that are like, why this doesn't work. English is such a complicated language, and it really breaks it down. So I have everything frozen here. Are we still on?
I do hear you.
I'm still here, but you are a little glitchy.
Sound like a robot.
I was going to chime in as well, just because I have a very similar story about my oldest. Seems like it's the oldest always. They really are leaders, but is definitely in their own time frame. And I actually sent her to like a pre-kindergarten at 4, and she was doing awesome. I thought she was gonna be reading, like really reading, and then it just so happened where like I grew as a parent and it wasn't working out, and we decided to pull her in homeschool. We finally jumped over that hurdle of fear, and all of a sudden she started shutting down when it came to reading. And I mean, tears, crying, full blown upset. And I thought, because I was still in that mindset of, oh, we have to do traditional school at home, so we can't allow her to get behind. I have to force her through the tears, force her to get it. She's just being stubborn. And she was probably about 8, pushing 9 almost, and could not read. Or she knew the sounds, but it just was not, she couldn't read. And my mom started telling me like, oh, she's illiterate, a lot of negativity was spoken over her out of concern, but still obviously negativity. And what we had actually done is I had stopped teaching her how to read altogether. I stopped reading lessons altogether. And I said, you know what? It's worse. She doesn't even want to do school because she doesn't want to read. So I actually started reading all of her lessons to her and making her follow along, and then answering all the questions with her. So it was extremely hands-on for me. It was definitely not a, hey, you do this paper or you do this lesson and I'll come check it. No, it was very painstaking for me. But we totally gave up on reading lessons. And all of a sudden, she brought a book to me one day and said, I love this book so much. And I'm like, what do you mean you love this book? You don't even know how to read. And she's like, no, this is what happens. And then he did this. And she had like all this reading comprehension where she was sitting in her bed, staying up late one night, reading this whole book. And she just decided to do it on her own. I think she was 9 years old, and it just, that clicked. And it really reiterated to me, like, every single child is going to do things on their own time, and it's okay, because you're not answering to anyone except your child. So it is okay to take a break. If your kid absolutely loathes science, they're not learning anything anyway, because their brain is shutting down and they're not going to listen. It's the same way if someone's trying to tell you something and your brain just can't function right now because you just need a minute. That's how kids are too. And it's so important to realize that they're a whole nother person with a whole nother functioning brain that's not like yours. And it's okay to just take a break. Like, sorry, I didn't mean to preach.
No, I think that's really, really good stuff. And it's really important. And to be honest, public school kids are not learning any sooner than 8, 9, 10, like truly, truly learning. I've talked to many, I was a public schooler, right? I think most of us were. And I know many that didn't learn until they were 8 to 10. So it's not really like we're behind. But yes, trying to force our kids to do something they're not ready for. It's like sleep training, right? Like it's not going to work. Like they're not ready to sleep until they're ready to sleep or whatever, right? So we can encourage it, but we need to also listen to them. So shifting gears a little bit. So still elementary / kindergarten type age. So what are your favorite hands-on learning activities to do with elementary age, and like what kind of items are a must for like kindergarten and like those early ages? I feel like Angela would have some good stuff for us.
Board games, my number one. There are several board games on the Amazon list that we will be putting out that you guys can use as a jumping off point. Find game schooling Facebook groups, join those, ask game schooling questions in NCM, in the NCM homeschooling group. So my son, and I think on a whole, a lot of preschool / kindergarten age really respond to sensory activities. So get on Pinterest, find ABC related sensory activities. So one of the things that I'll do is I have these letter lacing beads that are about this big. They come from Amazon. I will take those and I'll make a little snowball out of kinetic sand, and I'll pick 5 letters that we're going to talk about today. I will hide those beads in the kinetic sand snowballs, and then my son has to dig them out, so he's getting the sensory input, and then his brain is more receptive to talking about the letter. Sand writing. So on our Amazon list, I added some trays. I should have come prepared with props. But so I have trays and I have craft sand, or you can go to the beach and scoop up some sand. But I dump the sand into a tray. I hand him a paintbrush and we work on his pre-writing strokes. And he uses the paintbrush to draw in the sand, and then you just kind of shake the sand and it smooths out. And we do that until he hits his wall of interest. And then he sits and plays with his cars in the sand. So again, he's getting that sensory input. Well, I sit and I read to him. That's when we do our poetry. That's when we do our chapter books. That's when we are the book about good touch, bad touch, that type of thing where he's engaged in something else. His hands are busy, but he's listening and taking that all in. I'm gonna stop there.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead, Nicole. Go for it.
So our favorites are like nature journals, watercolors, pencils, magnifying glasses. We like having buckets and nets, and we go to ponds and rivers. And even just going outside and finding all of those things. Those are our favorite things to have on hand, because that's where the questions come and the curiosities, and just playing in the river and asking about the water rushing or the moss growing or things like that. Like, that's where a lot of our science lessons, and then from there, life lessons and subjects come in.
I'd like to add something too. With my kids when they were younger, preschool, toddler age, we did a lot of pretend play, and just, you know, that age is, I mean, my son's almost 3 right now, and he just loves talking about the blue pink dinosaur in the room, you know. And so, you know, I'll ask him, how big is the dinosaur? You know, is the dinosaur 2 or 3 years old? And so we talk about counting and colors, and so we just do a lot of pretend play with Play-Doh blocks. We have the sand tracing boards too, and my kids have really loved that. But I mean, if you don't want to buy something, just go outside and get some sticks and draw on the dirt with your kid, or sidewalk chalk. Like, I just feel like there's endless amounts of things you can use with toddlers and preschool age. So that's all. I just wanted to input that. Pretend play is huge.
No, it's awesome. That's great. That's great. I think play is very key for that age. And I think we undervalue how much they learn through play. And I was going to, as Angela was saying, when their hands are busy, it really helps. My second son has a very hard time focusing, so we bought finger fidgets. And he will listen a lot longer when he's got stupid things to play with. It makes no sense to me. I had to change my way of thinking. Caitlin's over there, because for me, I'm like, well, if you're not paying attention to me, then you're not paying attention, right? I'm like, cross your legs, put your hands in your lap, look at me, let me know that you're listening. But these silly things keep his attention, and he's able to narrate back to me what we're doing and really repeat back to me. I'm like, I didn't even know you were listening. And he is. So, you know, it's important to just really be open to figuring out how they can learn. So having things like that is great. Also,
And
for like, go ahead.
Jackie, and I know you commented on it today, but I posted a statement that talked about the whole body listening, where we talk about our kids sit with their legs crossed, their hands in lap, their eyes on us. Whole body listening is ableist, developmentally inappropriate, and harmful. And that has been a big hurdle that I have needed to overcome in my homeschool journey. So realize breaking out, again, that's part of the deschooling process. So breaking out of that public school mindset and incorporating the fidgets and the movement that our kids need is so important.
Yeah, I want to add just a moment to that. Is my audio working okay this time?
It is for now.
Okay. So my kids, when my older ones, they had OT for a while, and actually ended up working at that clinic. And something that that occupational therapist said was, we listen with our ears, not our eyes. And it was just this like shift for me, because that's how I had been raised. Look at me when I'm talking to you. And she did this exercise with me, and she said, okay, I want you to look at me let's look at each other. And we sat there, and it got so awkward because we never lost eye contact, and we just continued to stare at one another as we were talking. And it was like, this is weird. I can't do this. I need to look over here now and still be engaged in the conversation. But that, like, 5 minutes where she made me look at her eyes, and her eyes never left mine, was so awkward that I was like, okay, I will never tell my kid to look at me when I'm talking to them ever again. And it's not how we actually listen at all, as adults or as kids. So
I definitely think it's something that, so go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's kind of the Shoulder Talks article that we have on the website. That's how kids learn and communicate. And like, my kids learn best not sitting in a chair, not sitting still. My middle, Gideon, reads upside down, like hanging upside down from the couch. And that's where he's happy. Even when we have conversations, he does better spitting on the floor when he's having a conversation with me. But you have to make space for your child to be able to have their own space and speak and understand the way they do on their developmental level. And like, I might not sit hanging upside down reading a book because I'm also an adult with different needs, but my 6-year-old, he needs to hang upside down to be able to learn and understand better. So make space for your kids to handle their own space and trust that they know what they need. So you kind of got to go with that. Just if that's what they feel that they need to do in that moment, but they're still understanding, it doesn't matter if it looks pretty or is proper or anything like that. Just go with it. And they learn better and absorb better, and it's a happier homeschooling experience if you're not trying to fit them inside of a rigid box. Let them do their own thing.
And for those moms who are kind of freaking out about, internally about having your kids laying upside down as they're learning, I wanted to make sure that we had a time in our day where my kids did learn some etiquette, that if they were in a fancy restaurant, they would know how to present themselves, and kind of this thought process of there's a time and a place, and you can absolutely hang upside down and learn, and we do that. My kids are complete wildlings, but we have a 15-minute focus, and it's something I kind of pull from Charlotte Mason. We do tea time, and we have a 15 minutes where I do want you to learn this etiquette of what it looks like to come to the table, and learn reverence, because that's part of our faith. And sometimes worship looks wild and it's dancing and it's beautiful, and sometimes there's that moment where he is holy and we're coming before him. And so I think that both of those things can be taught. So you don't have to be like, okay, well, this is what my kid needs, and allow that, and then completely feel like I can't teach them how to be reverent. So you can have those times too.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are some really, really good things. Those are great. I was just gonna say that go to the dollar store and buy some things for math instead of, these are bats. We use bats for math and counting. It's not as high level as what you were thinking. I was just gonna add that as things that you need. You don't need to spend. I mean, because there's like cute little counting bears on Amazon, and they're like, I don't know. I'm in Canada, so they're expensive. But like I went to the dollar store and I got bats. And I got like gems, and we use them for math. And, there's different color gems. You could even start doing statistics and grouping and patterns. Like there's, I spent like $2 on these or whatever, right? So being creative, getting sticks and rocks and all of those other things. But there's so many things we can do, especially with our younger kids. So Samantha is actually on our call. If you look in the chat, I'll read her question, but we actually had a similar question as well. So, are any of us working moms? And how does that work? So none of us are single parents, but I know Angela's husband works away from home for a week at a time. So I think that she could probably speak on that. And then Lauren and myself and Shelby all work, and Bethany sometimes. I don't know officially. I don't want to be offensive. She sometimes works. You know what I mean?
I am a unicorn, okay? I am a unicorn.
So maybe Angela, if you can speak to single parent homeschooling, and then maybe if Lauren and I can take a moment to talk about working parent homeschooling.
So I am, my official title is solo parent. I am still married, but my husband does not live with us. He is a truck driver, which means he is gone 5 to 6, sometimes 7 days a week. So the biggest thing that you need to homeschool as a single/solo parent is community. These women on your screen right now hear the best parts and the worst parts of my day, because I cannot turn to my husband and say, guys, Ben picked up a crayon today. I just don't have that availability. So I have my community. I have a co-op that I'm a part of, where I have other moms supporting me, who can offer a day of respite if I need it. And I know when I drop my son off with another one of the co-op moms, they're gonna, if he has a question, they're gonna go into homeschool mom mode and help educate him. It absolutely can be done. I know lots and lots of, so I'm in Ohio Homeschooling Parents, which is the biggest homeschooling group for the state of Ohio. So search for kind of like your state homeschool group on Facebook. You will get so many ideas from the other single parents in that group about how it works in your state, how you can do single parenting homeschool in your state, whether that's, your care provider helps you with the curriculum that you choose, or, there's nurses who work 312s and then they just homeschool on the other days. Because with homeschool, it doesn't have to be Monday through Friday. There are days where my husband is home on a Saturday and he takes my son out and works on schoolwork on a Saturday with him. So involving your community and talking to other parents in your area to find resources are my two biggest suggestions.
Those are great. So I actually was a single parent for preschool for my oldest for a short period of time. And that's so I've been married before, and that's a whole other story. But in that year and a half, I was working outside the home, was juggling, trying to, and I thought I still was under the mindset of I can't let my kid fall behind, and he's so smart, and there's so much potential here. So I was, this was the kid that I pushed into refusing to want to learn. Because he was too smart. He was so smart. He just didn't, I pushed him too hard. And, so I was doing the preschool thing, was a single mom working outside the home with two other kids younger than him. And it was a hard thing to juggle. And it was in that season that I did learn that I could school at night, that I could school when worked for us. I really broke away from even traditional like bedtimes at the time. I had to find what worked for our family and not compare myself and my situation to the moms who could get up at 7 a.m. and put their kids to bed twice or nap twice a day and then bed by 7. Like I just couldn't do that and still see my kid and still get in what any kind of preschool stuff, which was really low maintenance anyway. And so I really threw out the traditional schedule and the traditional mindset and found what's going to work for him, what's going to work for us. And that was really when I started finding outside resources. We actually used I don't know if everybody has it in their community, but it was like a hippie program. If you have a young kid, it's before school. So I actually had somebody come and she did one lesson a week with my kid. And it was very play oriented and reading a book to them. And that was something that really helped. Just having, hey, I'm doing something. There's this person. And it was just a free service that my community offered. And then as a working mom now, I'm a married and we have 5 children, and we're a little different because my husband and I both live on the road. We live on the road full time in an RV. So my husband does some of the schooling while I do some of the schooling. And we, like I said, we really work that in with life learning. But I am a midwife, and I am do a lot of health coaching, and I'm doing a lot of virtual, some stay-at-home working mom. And there's a lot of times where I have to step into a different area so that I can do my work. So that definitely really just kind of goes back to what I learned as a single parent. We can learn in life, and they can come with us in my job, when that's appropriate, or with daddy when he's serving a church or whatnot. And we also just make sure that the schedule works for us, not for the calendar.
No, I think those are some really, really great things. Thank you, Lauren. So I work part-time. I don't work full-time. I think it would be very difficult to homeschool as a single full-time working mom. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you really do need support, family or friends, or you need a community. I mean, as a single parent, you would need a community, period. The way that we balance things is I do hire someone. I'm on mat leave right now because I just had a baby, but I do hire someone to come in 2 days a week for 4 hours each day. And she hangs out with my kids. And so that way I can focus on like office stuff, or if I have meetings or for things like that. Also, my work schedule is flexible. So our homeschool is flexible and my work schedule is flexible. So we definitely just kind of work with that. So you really need to look at your resources. There are homeschool working mom or working parent Facebook pages. I would encourage you to really ask the question there. They would be able to give you some better ideas as to what that should look like. Just real quick, someone had asked what I was holding. And so they're just finger fidgets. I actually just got them at a local like school store. And it's just stuff that kids can play with. So, and then this guy just has different things on each side. Actually, it's kind of fun to play with for myself, to be honest. But yeah, just things. I mean, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can get really anything, like Angela was saying, even some sand with some cars. So, all right, let's look at the next question. There's so many, guys. Someone's asking favorite Bible curriculum. Does anybody here use a Bible curriculum? Oh, Bethany's like, I got one.
Can I, I just wanted to add for the last several questions. We're all sitting here talking and I am literally playing with makeup brushes and putting makeup on my hand. So like as an adult, I sit here and I do like this and I do this and I do this because that's how I listen and how I focus. So it's a really good thing to remember that like our kids are no different. They are also human. And if you find yourself doodling or whatever, that's what your kid needs too. So side note. And I wanted to jump in on this question because I, for many years, have looked for the perfect Bible curriculum. I'm a huge fan of like churches using the Gospel Project. I think it's fantastic. And I know that they have like a homeschool curriculum as well, or you can kind of like use their stuff. But this year we are doing something so different and I'd love to share it. And that is we are picking passages of scripture and we're writing out in the morning and all of us are reading it. So like today we did John 1:1-5. So my husband, myself, my two daughters who are fluent in the reading, my son who was just reading, and even my 4-year-old, we all read that in scripture. And so our goal is that in the morning, we're going to read that scripture together and we're going to really seek out Jesus in our personal reading. And then in the evening, we're coming together and we're discussing that. And my hope is with that is that we are going to teach our children or model or show our children how to personally seek their Savior. And I think that is something that oftentimes the Bible curriculum misses. And there are amazing curriculums out there. Like I know Master Books has one out there. The author from Gather Round, I can't remember her name right now, but she has one that's fantastic out there. Like there are good ones out there. I'm doing a girls' Bible study with my 9 and 11-year-old right now. We're just sitting and doing it right before we finish school. But I would really encourage families to not put so much focus on curriculum and Bible curriculum and making a part of our school work versus being like, this isn't going to be a part of our school time. We're going to seek God personally, and then we're going to seek God as a family and separate it from our homeschool. Because the last thing that we want is our children being like, oh, I don't want to do a Bible study because I'm equating that with schoolwork. So that's my thoughts on it.
Does anybody have like music, like when Kanye talked too long and then they just started playing music?
I was like the shortest talker ever, okay? Lauren talks way more than me.
Shelby, go ahead.
Well, I only raised my hand because I was totally going to say something, and then Bethany started saying what I was going to say. So
Okay.
I do feel like a lot of times, this is not very pointed at anybody, but I do feel a lot of times people are looking for curriculum as their answer to like, almost like a do this for me so I can read specifically out of a book and follow these worksheets, and that's school. And a curriculum is not going to provide your child with everything they need. And like Bethany said, you don't want to teach the Bible like it's just part of school. So actually, like our worship time and our Bible time, we don't even include that in school. We don't do Bible in school. We do Bible in life. And literally teaching Bible is discussing things with your children that happened and saying like, hey guys, let's turn on some worship music and really get into it, you know, or hey, let's sit down together and discuss this crazy story. Like Bible time is family time and it's personal time and it's a lifestyle. It's not part of a curriculum. And so, and whoever is writing that curriculum, that's their own personal feelings on an interpretation of the Bible or what your child should learn. So it's like, I feel like when people are saying, do you have a curriculum? We don't have that. We don't have a one-off answer for you of how to do this. You've got to learn how to do this through like your natural setting instead of having someone do it for you. Does that make sense?
I think as Christians, we need to learn how to do this ourselves, and then we need to implement that to our kids. There's nothing wrong with using even Bible commentary in our own studies, but we need to learn to get into the Word of God. Some days, this is all the school that we do. This is literally it. Some days, and I have no issues with that, because some days this is the most important thing. And yes, we use a comic book Bible because I have 3 boys, and that's how we roll. So I think that's awesome. Thank you, guys. Okay.
Could I add a thought to that real quick?
Sure.
When I was doing Charlotte Mason schooling, I was following the Amplified online curriculum for a while with my kids, and they had a section of what you follow as hymns. Like there would be a song, a hymn for the term, which was like 3 or 4 weeks. And so when we did that, we would have our girls pick out a hymn to work on, and we just would talk about the hymn. We would sing the hymn. And then also in that, we would look at how it relates to scripture, or how the hymn was created, and like the kind of the theology around that for their age levels. And that really like helped us dig into the Bible more during that season for us. So I would say look outside of just like reading the scripture. Not that reading the scriptures, that's great, but sometimes you can explore like worship songs. Like if your child has a favorite worship song, explore that with them. And that can be hit all kinds of topics with school, and you're just digging into God's word more and experiencing Jesus with your child. So I just wanted to add that in. That was something that helped us. So
Yeah, and heroes of the faith too, like like church history, like reading testimonies of people who have gone before us is powerful for our children. Tales of Persia, every family needs that book. Every family. I'll link it at some point. I'll add it to the list, Angela.
Okay, we're gonna go to the next question, and we're gonna keep it to 2 answers. Okay, we got a lot of questions. We're gonna have to do like a part 2 of this to get to all the questions. How do I motivate my child? So battles around motivation, battles around completing work. I'm looking at you, the people who do like actual book work every day and stuff like that. So lots of people have actually asked questions. How do I motivate my child? And then an add-on to that would be, how do I motivate a neurodivergent child to starting the work? It's not necessarily doing the work that's hard, but getting kids started is often the hardest part. So besides bribing them with candy or anything like that, 2 of you, go for it. Motivation.
So my son he has sensory processing, which can have some neurodivergent tendencies. So for an example, so my son struggles with fine motor. It is physically painful for him. He can't do it, so he feels like a failure, and then that just kind of cycles. So last week, one of the things that I did was he was watching TV. I went into the living room. I picked up crayons and coloring books, and I walked myself into the kitchen alone. He comes in, he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm coloring." He's like, "What do you mean?" I wanted to color. And so he chose to pick up a crayon and he colored. And now this child, you cannot bribe, you cannot pay, you can give him a whole candy store. He's not going to pick up a crayon. But because he saw me doing something, he was like, "I think I might want to do that." Now, he lost interest pretty quick, but he was proud of the work that he did. And I was happy with the fact that he just picked up a crayon for literally the first time in the month of April, August, 2020, man. So we're like halfway through August, and it was literally the first time he had picked up a writing implement. So that's my suggestion: is you just start doing it. Because I mean, think about it. You have to go to the bathroom. What do the kids do? They have to go to the bathroom. You want to eat something. What do the kids want to do? They want to eat your food. So if you start doing something, guarantee you, your kid's going to want to do it too.
I can kind of talk of this a little bit, but it's maybe more of a child-led thing. I think this is where the child-led comes in handy, is if you're picking subjects that you know your kids are interested in, it's a lot easier to get them on board for learning. Or if they want to do specific handiwork, maybe you want them to learn a language or do music, but you let them pick the language or the instrument, and strewing as well. Laying things out, having a basket in the morning that has things that maybe they haven't really been introduced to, dinosaurs or fossils or things like that. Having a basket of interesting things that they can kind of pull out of various subjects, and they can pull out what fits for what they're interested in. And then that's a more motivated learning. They've got something different they haven't seen before. And just hands-on projects a little more fun. Worksheets, I don't know. We had a hard time with that.
So one of the things that Caitlin actually shared with me a few weeks ago is there are Minecraft workbooks. Okay. And I thought that my kids would never be into Minecraft because we homeschool, we don't public school. I don't know how they found out about Minecraft, but they love it. And sure enough, we don't do book work, but I bought some of the workbooks and my kids are just going through it and they're just playing with it and they're working on it and they're just doing it because they want to and they're excited. And it's like they like solving puzzles. And so, but now it's Minecraft themed puzzles. I don't know. It seems so silly, but instead of saying, "Here, write this word," it's, write apple because there's a golden apple in Minecraft, right? So that really, just really working with them. So if it is book work or whatever that you're trying to do, maybe try to figure out in a way that they actually really want to enjoy it. So next question. This one's for all of us, but Bethany, she's going to be answering it as well. How do you handle the fear of failing or letting your child down if their education isn't what you hoped it would be? Do you fear gaps in their education? And honestly, when I read this question, I went, well, I was public schooled and there were plenty of gaps in my education. So it's not like as homeschoolers, we're not trying to meet the public school system because there's plenty of things wrong with it. And we all have different reasons why we choose to homeschool. We're not anti-public school, any of us, but for our families, we've chosen to homeschool for whatever reason. So, I would say that, gaps would be usually when you're comparing it to public school, and there's plenty of gaps there. And fear of failing, I think we all have that. I think that's a healthy kind of thing to keep you motivated. So, Bethany, what would you like to add to that question?
Yeah, so I first would like to share the story about our oldest daughter, who is 19. She came to us at 13, and I began homeschooling her after virtual schooling was not working in her freshman year. And talk about gaps. This child missed major gaps of her public education. So gaps can really happen anywhere, first of all. But second of all, I think we need to there's a couple things we need to recognize is, first of all, I have done many curriculums, okay? And every year I am left feeling like it's not good enough. I'm left sitting there going, oh my goodness, we haven't done enough. And so I think as moms in general, we basically run off of, I'm not good enough, I'm going to fail my children. It is like inbred into us, right? It is part of our, how just us, right? So I think we need to recognize that failure thing, that's coming from the enemy, and that's not coming from Christ. Second of all, who are we falling behind? Because your child can only fall behind himself, because he's only going to learn at his own rate. And that's not even a possible thing. So when your child looks at you, your child is not looking like, my mom has failed. They're looking like, oh my gosh, my mom is making me cookies and we get to go outside today, right? It's a huge difference. And we really need to recognize that our children as homeschoolers, we do not need to compare ourselves to the Common Core standards that are put before us, because the whole reason why we educate our children at home is that we don't have to do that. We don't have to keep up with that. And with my oldest daughter, she had major gaps. She stopped going to school in March of her 8th grade year. So she missed 3 months of school, came in, missed another whole 2 months of school, and began homeschooling with me. And as I said, that child is now at president's list at her college. So, and for high school, she just learned what she wanted to learn. And that's a whole nother subject. But gaps can be made up. And if your child is motivated and loved and supported, they can be astronauts and scientists and historians, anything they want to be.
Caitlin?
Oh, I was just going to add. So my husband works for a public school. He was a public school teacher for 5 years. He now teaches the teachers how to teach. And when it comes to public school, no two public schools are the same. None of them use the same curriculum. None of them have the same teachers. There is no standard. I mean, I know there's Common Core standard, but even then, how they implement them are completely different. So if your kid has the love of learning, then there won't be gaps, because they will love learning so much they'll figure it out themselves. They will take the initiative upon themselves to be like, oh, I don't know about World War II. Maybe my mom didn't teach me about it, but I know how to learn about it. I know where to get the information. I know to go to the library, or what websites to trust, or to look up, interviews or data. And so it's not so much of leaving gaps as so much of letting them know how to fill those gaps, because there's so many things we don't know. So how do we figure out our answers? And I think as long as your kid knows how to find answers, there's no such thing as gaps.
I think that's awesome.
I love that. I just want to add one little thing. Both what Bethany and Caitlin said is exactly the first things that came to my mind. But a question back to that question is, learning ever actually done? And kind of like what Caitlin was saying, if we can teach them how to learn, that if you look at the occupations that have the most education, that are, like 8 years of college, like a doctor, those people still have continuing education. They had gaps because knowledge is changing. New information is coming out. They have, as a holistic health provider, I have to do continuing education if I want to make sure that I'm doing the best at my, career. And so learning's never done. So yes, there's going to be gaps, because our world is ever changing. There's new stuff coming out. Just teach them how to learn, and let the accuser or the brethren go somewhere else.
I think most professionals have to. As I'm a pastor, and I'm required to do a certain amount of continuing education courses or continuing education hours. It can look like books or classes. Like, there's many ways I can do it, but I'm supposed to, every single year I have a certain amount of hours I have to do. So I think that's really, really common. And I think that's a really good point, that we need to constantly be learning anyway. So I'm glad you're back, Bethany, because these next two questions are pretty much for you. Well, I mean, anybody can answer this, but I know you've looked into it. Can we talk about teaching history? So this was from the Facebook page. Bethany's been creating her own history curriculum for years. No. How can we teach history? What's the best approach to teach history? I just want to teach my kids the truth. Now, like for us, I hate history. I'm not even going to lie. I'm not going to butcher that. I hate history. But we have this really cool world atlas, and it's literally a map, and it's through the ages, and it shows different things. It actually even include like Solomon's temple and stuff like that, because it's a historical thing, right? But seeing history like this really helped me. So I think that's not really what you're asking. You're asking how to teach real history, but I think that it's important to know how to teach it too, right? Because as a learner who doesn't like it, and my teachers did not do a good job. So how do we find real and accurate history? What do you guys, I know Bethany has looked into this, so.
Yeah, so this has been a long journey for me. My dad is kind of a historian, and I have found great distaste for especially Christian homeschool history curriculum. And I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but I find that it is incredibly inaccurate, whitewashed, and from this view that all people are Christians or whatever, if they were blessed that they were Christians. And that's just not how I want to present history to my children. For me, my goal when I present history to my children is that they would love the nations, that they would look at the nations and say, I love these people. I know their history and I love them because my Father loves them. And I think that that is profound. So when I teach history, I start from the beginning, and I start from a biblical history and I move on out. And so we basically go through biblical history to the Tower of Babel, and then we research, or then we talk about Babel dispersion, and then go from there. So when my children start learning about the continents of North and South America, they're not learning the continents from a perspective of a white settler coming and colonizing it. They're learning it from a perspective of these are people who came from the Tower of Babel and who inhabited the land, and then these people came over. So I think it's important that we're honoring the peoples who were there first. I think that that is a powerful thing. We need to do that. And I think it is important that we do our own research. So if we're sitting and finding a curriculum and we are blindly following it, and it's saying Christopher Columbus heard from God, heard from the Holy Spirit, and did this, and he went and brought Jesus to the nation, we need to look at that with discernment and saying, no, Christopher Columbus was a drunk who was not a good person at all, right? And he did this, and it was horrendous, but God in his sovereignty allowed it to happen and through there, right? So my biggest thing is that when you read things, is testing it for accurate history and getting multiple sources. Sorry, I'm going to stop because I know I talk too long. So living books, no textbooks. Stay away from textbooks, stay away from the textbooks, go to living books, accurate living books. I'm sorry, I have a hard time expressing it, so I'll end there.
I agree. And I don't like history, and my son likes historical fiction novels. And so he's learned about things, and I've learned about history. And I think it's really important. And when you are learning history and you're doing living books, even trying to find books written from people that were actually from, that people group is important, because like I can't write an accurate book about indigenous people because I'm white. Like, I don't have that culture. So I think it's really important to go back to the people who actually live that culture. So that's awesome.
Can I just chime in? Jackie from the comments, Janixa, hopefully I'm saying that right. Let me know, because I don't want to butcher anybody's name. Says, is living books a collection or is it reference to the Bible? Living books are books that offer value to our children. So, I said it right. That are not a textbook, or not like, when you get those stupid Disney books like Sophia the First. That's not a living book. Living books are something that they're rich and they're full of information. So even if we're reading a historical fiction like American Girl books are really good living books, because while it's fiction, it's giving an accurate portrayal to what's happening at that time, and they're gaining knowledge from that. It's not just useless like the cat said. That's that.
And one of our favorite ways
Or
to
the
do
big head.
through field trips. So like Jackie and I went to Harper's Ferry or any local places. We are close to DC. So we have Virginia, Pennsylvania, throughout West Virginia, and all of the surrounding states that we can go do historical museums and things like that. So I know we're really lucky to have that, and not everybody is in an area that has, maybe the best museums, but you may have local museums that will help your children become interested in the history from where you are also. So that's always fun.
And really like, oh, sorry, go
Charlotte.
ahead, Lauren.
I'm sorry. Charlotte Mason is, or at least in those circles, is where you're going to really hear and learn about the difference between living books and like twaddle books, which is kind of like the C spot ran kind of thing. So I would search that out and really get a good living book library going on in your homeschool.
And there's nothing wrong. Like if your kid wants to read, like, these books, what are they even called? The Bob books. Like they have value. It's not that these books don't have value. It's just if you want something that's going to go a little deeper than the big hat, then, you need to search for that. But yes, museums are amazing for that, actually going and doing that. I actually have, when Nicole and I went, the kids did like a junior ranger thing at Harper's Ferry, and like, they got to talk about like the history and everything like there. And if there's a park ranger, talk to them about what they have at their local park. So, okay, Bethany, are you ready? I don't think anybody else has done gather round. So this is a gather round specific question. So it's probably going to have a short answer. So she just bought the first unit of gather round, and she's wondering if anybody's used it, and if we have any advice for teaching her kindergartner and second grader. She also had to buy the digital version. So she's wondering how you've used the digital version, which I know you've used. How did you organize it? Did you bring binders for each child? That kind of thing. So maybe give us a short-ish answer.
Okay, yeah, Gather Round is a great curriculum. I will note, I love Gather Round. I would not rely on it to teach your child how to read unless you're using the specific kindergarten. I know she just came out with new things, and so I do want to add that I did not find their pre-reader and then their early reader. There was definitely a gap there. So just so you're aware. As far as organizing it, I would download the teacher's guide to an iPad Pro. I have an iPad Pro or an iPad, and teach from there. Some people plug their computer into their TV and they show the pictures through that. Don't waste your money in printing it, because you can easily show it digitally to your children. And then I would print mine out and pop them into folders, because I had quite a few levels that I was teaching. But at the end, I actually ended up keeping it all in a binder for myself, and I would put them on clipboards. So whatever the day was, if it was day 3, I'd pop those sheets specifically in a clipboard. Done. So easy, so quick. File them away after you're done. Thankfully, it's a really great curriculum, and it's easy to organize, I think. So yeah, that's what I did.
And yes, Bethany did do a gather round review on YouTube. So, and I've used their Indigenous People unit. I've just done the first 2 lessons, and I just print off the lesson for the day for my reader levels. And then I just use my computer and just flip it around and show the kids. I don't print out the parent guide. Does anyone have any advice for high school? It is overwhelming thinking about starting high school. And I know, like, I have the same question, or a lot of people are like, oh, well, you're homeschooling for elementary, but you're going to send them to high school, right? I always get like this question from people, and I'm like, no, we're homeschooling forever, right? So I think Bethany is the only one that's had a high schooler, and I think we've talked a bit about it. So can you maybe give a few words of advice for high school?
Yeah, I think it's really important to keep track of what you're doing, but high school is, I feel like high school is even more important to do child-led than necessarily when they are young, because when they're young, they might not know that shipbuilders or captains exist, right? But when they're older, they have a really broad range of knowledge and they can really begin to look into that. For me, again, I've said I've used almost every curriculum out there. And every curriculum I was left saying, is it enough? Is it enough? Is it enough? And let me just share that when I went through and I did Lexi's, my daughter's credits, she had like a ridiculous amount of credits versus what she needed to graduate from high school. Like I essentially could have actually have had her graduated a year before what she actually graduated. So that keep track as you go. I think that that's important. Make sure you are connecting with your state or country laws, that you know how they do high school graduation, but really embrace it because colleges love homeschool students. I know the ones that we applied for loved her, and trusted that she was going to be like very well educated through the process and begin looking at saying like, okay, well, we did this and we did this, and just keep track of it ahead of time from freshman year on. And it's going to really surprise you. And the last thing I'm going to say is utilize your college resources. There are so many community colleges that do dual enrollment. So if your child's like really a big history buff, have them go take some college courses on history and let them explore that, because now is it's the time to do that. But don't let don't let high school scare you, because it's so much fun, B, they're a lot more independent, and C, you are really going to see your child flourish in something that they love. And that is very, very rewarding.
I obviously don't have a high schooler, but I have watched and researched a bit into this, and I've seen high schoolers even get apprenticeships in things that they might want to do. So instead of your kid going off to college and spending all this money on something they think they want to do, they're when they're 16, 17, 18, partnering them with someone in the community that does what they think they want to do will really help them decide, is this actually what I want to do or not? So there are so many benefits of being able to homeschool for those years.
Can I add one more thing?
No.
Too bad. From a ministry perspective and from a parent perspective, the absolute best thing you can do for your child is foster their spiritual relationship and cultivate that. It doesn't matter if they fail geometry, their heart for Jesus matters. So make that your focal point. And I'm telling you, send your child on a missions trip, whether they go down the road to your closest city or go across the world to Uganda. Send your child, because and a long-term missions trip, I'm talking like 2 months, that's not long-term, but you know what I mean? Let them experience that and let them go and share the gospel, because that is life-changing. Okay, now I'm done.
Glad you said that, because that's actually what I told my husband, is that's how our kids are going to graduate from our homeschool. Is they are going to thoroughly research a community, a country. They're going to thoroughly fund their own mission trip. They're going to book their own plane ticket. They're going to do everything. They're going to present it to us. We're going to approve it. And then they're actually going to go do it. Like, think about all the life skills. Like, how many adults do you know that don't know how to book an airplane trip, right? Or whatever, right? So, that's actually our graduation, whatever, stamp of approval, go serve somewhere else. And there you go. Okay. I have another question. Okay. My son is 10. He loves reading, but hates writing. He used to love writing. He had a teacher when he was in public school that made a snide comment at him about how elaborate his writing was when she really wanted a short summary. Now he hates writing, and I can't for the life of me figure out how to get past that. So I don't think this is as much an education question as it is a how do we help our kids get past a hurdle? So would anybody like to speak to that?
I'll speak up. So I guess I can relate. So this is almost a personal experience, not necessarily a parental experience, because I haven't had that yet with my kids, but as someone that used to really love writing, and then you ended up with a teacher that nitpicks your writing or says something really negative about you. The hard part, I guess, is allowing that space to happen for them, not forcing it. You can encourage them and be positive about them learning it and trying it again, but it's really something that they're going to have to decide to do. You can inspire them with other their favorite subjects, and if you're going to do writing practice, don't pick like book work or like this stereotypical essay type things. Pick something that they love, something that they would want to have to do. Like if you're going places or like museums or art galleries, it's something that can inspire them. And so you can't make them love writing again, but you can inspire them to fall back in love with it. And I think that's, from just a personal experience, is that something you're going to have to be patient with and let them come to that conclusion on their own. Besides inspiring them and encouraging them, just be patient.
I just want, because Caitlin is a writer, like truly, and I want to say that just the feedback that that teacher gave, it sounds to me like your kid is a writer, like it is a call in their life. And so I would say pray. you know, yes, expose them to all of the things and give them good authors to read, and whatever that, let them fall back in love. But that sounds to me like it was an attack from the enemy against who they are and who God created them. Pray over that, break that off of them, and let them find their path back to it.
Let's see. Okay, so we are at about an hour and a half. So I would like to finish up the questions that we received on our Facebook Live and maybe save the questions if we want to do a part 2. I'm just thinking that it's been an hour and a half and people are probably ready to stop. So we'll get a few more questions in, and then, yeah, maybe figure out a part 2 day. So, and the other question we got a few more questions from the Facebook Live. Can anyone give tips about how to homeschool while taking care of a toddler and an infant and keeping the house clean and cooking 3 meals a day? I feel like this is the wrong crowd to ask this to. I feel like, I feel like Talitha and Caitlin and Nicole, and I mean, all of us would really be able to answer this. So how do we do this? How do we survive?
Well, baby wearing, lots and lots of baby wearing. My wild child is my 3-year-old. So I have a baby that is 8 months old, my wild child that's 3, and then I have a 5, 8, and 9-year-old. And yeah, baby wearing, and then sensory bins is one of my favorite things. So we set up clay in an interesting book and popsicle sticks, and she can make letters or shapes or whatever with that. And that's kind of what my 5-year-old does too. Well, she's turning 5. And that keeps their hands busy. It keeps them intrigued while we do lessons. And making the meals, like getting the kids involved. The meals don't have to be fancy. Like get the kids on the counter, get some kid-safe knives, let them cut with you, let them, make the meals, because they're learning while they're doing it. They're not getting into trouble for the most part, and yeah, it kind of helps. I mean, my child was like wiping foam on her from the milk today from helping me froth milk. So it doesn't promise that there's not mess and chaos, but they're involved and she's safe and happy, and we're still learning in the process. So kind of just go with the flow and get them involved with whatever you're doing.
I was going to add, so you don't have to do like, it's okay if one day of your week or 2 days of your week is just cleaning up the kitchen and doing laundry. Like if you don't get to a worksheet that day or a certain art activity, it's okay. Like involve your kids with the laundry, have them fold socks or towels. My 2.5-year-old loves to just throw socks in a basket, and even though that's not really helping us get the laundry done, it's keeping him busy while my older 2 help me fold towels and stuff. So just be encouraged that, like, if you have a couple days a week where it's just you focusing on the house and the cooking, that's okay. Like that's life. You're also teaching your children valuable skills for later on in life. So that's kind of part of learning and education. So be encouraged in that.
I would also say reevaluate your expectations on what can actually get done in a day. Leave behind the comparison game and make sure that it's realistic. Like you don't have to be super mom, and we don't have to continuously stay busy. You can have a slow life and just enjoy your children being children and include them in the life skills that is very much part of this whole thing we call homeschooling.
Yeah, and just practically utilize nap time. You don't have to do school in the morning. Like you can do school in the afternoon nap time. Like that's what we do. We try to aim school for when my 1-year-old is napping, because otherwise he's standing in the middle of the table kicking the books off. Like that's just what he does. Utilize napping and grouping. Group your stuff together. If you've got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, oh my goodness, your 1-year-old can participate with whatever your 3-year-old is doing, and so on and so on. And that's really important. Let them be a part of it. So my 1-year-old climbs all over us, taking stuff off the table. But if I give him tactile things and he's sitting at the table or in the living room or outside, wherever we might be, and he feels involved, it changes the atmosphere for us with schooling. So let your little ones be a part of it. They're reaping, they're learning from their older siblings. And the more you fight against it, the worse it's going to be. So just go with it. That's my biggest advice.
I was going to add one more thing. Like personally, I'm not against screen time. Like sometimes there are days where my toddler sits and watches Baby Einstein for a half hour while I'm working with my other children. So I'm just going to put that out there. It's okay. No one's going to
I
take
thought this was a Christian group.
Well,
Now this was a crunchy group.
Yeah, right. No, just kidding.
I also
So
spend my youngest sometimes while I focus on with the middle ones. And, that's part of a life skill as well. And so when I'm needing some like more one-on-one, we let the older kid actually do some pseudo babysitting. So that's another option if you have older ones.
Also, it's kind of weird, but homeschool outside. We homeschool playing in water. So I'll be like, okay, you two go play in the water. I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes and then we're going to swap. And then you'll go play in the water for 10 minutes with your sibling while I read with you for 10 minutes. And then it's kind of like, just like this rotating thing, but it's outside. So it keeps the mess out of your house. It keeps them entertained. They burn energy and then they take a better nap later. So
we homeschool on the trampoline sometimes. I've asked them math questions on the trampoline and they throw stuffed animals at me, and when they get them right, and they're learning and everybody's involved. Yep. So we have a question for Angela. I say it's for Angela because it suits your personality. So how do you, so this is about a kid who's strong-willed or a wild child, if you will. Any advice for homeschooling when your teaching style doesn't necessarily align with your child's learning style? So I'm thinking being more list-driven, type A, versus having a kid who just isn't like that. So this mom says that her jam is worksheets and structure and organization, and her spirited 5-year-old is very much the opposite. So how do you kind of reconcile those things?
So this actually goes along with another question that we got on our Google form that says, do you complete your curriculum every year? I like checking boxes. Do you complete your curriculum? Here's, like, you guys aren't going to like this. Everybody's laughing because this is my personality. This isn't about you, Mama. What you're doing, this isn't about you. This isn't about what you want to accomplish. This isn't about the lists that you want to check. I do have one prop. Let me show you something. this
The reason she her crop is
This
because
is- this is how I live my life. This is my planner. This has my entire life written in this. So many check boxes, so many lists for every time somebody in NCM says, "Hey guys, let's do this." It goes in my book. It's like, I have things written in here like print out scissor skills worksheets because that's a goal that my son has for occupational therapy. But when it comes down to it, my son isn't a kid that's ever going to fit into a box. My son is wild, and I still haven't figured out how my son learns. I think that's going to be something that changes day to day, and I have had to accept I am the perfect Abeka mother. I am. Abeka is hardcore lists and books, and you sit down and you do it for 8 hours a day. I am that mom. That is me. Not my kid. My kid is an unschooler, almost like radical unschooler at heart. And that's been hard for me to accept. And God calls us to die to our flesh in so many ways. So many ways. And this is one of the ways that we do it. I have to figure out what my son needs. I have to put on my big girl panties and get out the slime and get out the Play-Doh and get out the kinetic sand. And then look at my kitchen and cry because it's all over my kitchen. I have to do those things, and I have to die to those desires and meet my son where he's at. So I told you you guys weren't going to like it. Sorry.
Does anybody feel convicted over here about dying to self and it's not about you and your list? I was like, Angela, please, that was too much.
Preaching.
I know. I'm like, woo. Oh man, that was good. That was good. I have nothing to add to that. And if anybody has anything to add to that, I'm sorry. You need to be quiet because Angela, sit down. Angela's got it. We're actually almost done the questions, so we're just gonna plow through them real quick. What is a typical daily time frame for your schooling? And we've talked about how it can look different for everybody, but like, how much time, how old is your kid maybe, and how long do you actually spend? Like for me, I have a 7, a 5, and a 3-year-old and a newborn. Obviously she's not, the newborn's not learning yet, but but for us, some days my kids really, really want to learn. And so we're like all day long, we're intentionally learning. I want to say we learn all day long every day because we do. But when we're talking about like actual school, like looking up something, like I feel like some days it's like I said, we read the Bible and that's kind of the extent of it. And other days it's like, I feel like all day they're like, Mom, how does a boomerang come back? Mom, what about this? Mom, what about this? Hey Mom, can we help you cook? And stuff like that. So for us, there is no time. It just really changes. So what do you guys add?
So Ben is almost 6. We typically really don't do table work, and table work is what most people think that's when you are like really homeschooling. When you are sitting at a table and you're doing a workbook, you're reading a book, blah, blah, blah. Not really homeschooling. I mean, it is homeschooling, but that's not the only time that your kid is learning. So we really don't do table work. But if we do table work, and I feel like that's what this question is about, I actually just before tonight was reading. So your kid's attention span is your child's age plus 5 minutes. So if your child is 5, you can get about 10 minutes of solid attention before they've moved on. And that's pretty accurate. We're at about, when he's invested, when he's in some really doing something, 10, maybe 20 minutes, and we're done with table work.
Yeah, I mean, for us, so we have older kids. When Lexi was high schooling, she would be 3 to 4 hours tops. It just really depended on how motivated she was to get her work done. Now that I have a middle schooler, an upper elementary school, a lower elementary school, and a quote pre-K, our book work or schoolwork day is about 3 hours, give or take a few. It really depends on what we're adding in. Some days are a little bit longer than others, because some days we do extra things versus not. But in general, but you have to recognize that in that is lunch, breaks, time to go potty, like it's not like that kind of thing. It is just kind of, as Caitlin said, hanging on the couch reading and things like that. Like it is very fluid, I guess. That time is very, very, very fluid. If you are over 4-5 hours with your book work, stop. No, this is your home. This is not public school. Stop.
What can I order for my preschooler? There's a question about homeschooling a preschooler. I know that I think all of us would agree that curriculum is not at all necessary, or is even detrimental for a preschooler. But what are some things that this mom, she's going to be using a babysitter. She works full time, so the babysitter is going to be working with kids. So what are some things that she can have around? Now we have talked about, I know Angela talked about like the sand and like just different things, but what are some maybe specifics that you
One
guys
thing
would recommend?
I love. So we get a subscription to these letters that come from around the world, and we use that all of our kids, from 9 all the way down. They all love listening to them. So we laminate them and we read them to the kids. And so this girl Isabel travels to all these different places, and then she tells a story of what she ate, where she went, where she stayed, things like that. And that's one of our favorite resources that work for our pre-K up to like my 3rd, 4th grader. So that's one of our favorites, along with all of the things that Angela was mentioning, the kinetic sand, all those finger toys, sensory things. That's play. And then Talitha mentioned earlier the pretend play. Those are like our resources for our pre-K age.
So if you look at like Read Aloud Revival, or there's book lists out there. So just order a ton of books from the library, and hand them to the babysitter and just have her read, and then read some more.
Nicole, somebody asked what's the letter thing called again?
It's called Letters from Afar, and I can tag it down in the comments somewhere. But yeah, just at Letters from Afar, and she's got a website. It's I think $6 a month, and it comes once a month, and it's amazing. I think Jackie, you also get it in Talitha. I think you've tried it.
We love it because you can simply read the letter, or you can add things from, like you can cook, you can look at music. We've even printed out and done like color pages, like of the maps. You can, like, there's so many add-ons that you can do as a mom for this. I had no idea that lemurs only came from one place. I don't know if you guys know, but lemurs, they come from Madagascar. There's no other place that lemurs are in the entire world except for Madagascar. Well, I learned that. I don't know if my kids learned, but I learned that. But I really like that resource.
Yeah, so with the letters, we've done like Machu Picchu, we've made ceviche, and we've, like explored the different areas of Peru and different ways of travel. And then we've did Grenada, and my brother-in-law was actually in Grenada at the time and brought home spices, and it was like perfect timing. And it just makes it more of that like living education, using it with the living books, and like really, I don't know, it's a lot of fun.
I would say start stocking your library filled with living books and art supplies. I honestly really subscribe to quality art supplies for my children. I mean, real artist watercolors, real quality colored pencils. Give them beautiful art supplies, quality paper. Yes, my kids will use printer paper sometimes too when they're just like, okay, they're going to go through it right now. But when we're doing even the preschooler, I will give legit watercolors too with watercolor paints. And then lots of outside time and things that they can use outside, whether it's, bug examination, magnifying glasses, and, fun herbal identification cards from Botany in a Day, those kinds of things would be what I bring into art preschool. And even realistic play, like role playing stuff. My little girl, she's 3, and because I'm a midwife, she sees what she thinks are doctor stuff, and so I got her legitimate real stethoscope and a real blood pressure cuff and a real reflex hammer, and give them the real things that are obviously safe, that they learn so much through just playing. So
that's one thing I want to really encourage too, is what Lauren was saying, is that give them the real things. I mean, I know you can buy like kid friendly paints, or like the sterilized type methods where you put on a smock and you cover their hands, and like give them the real thing and they'll figure it out on their own. One of the best things we learned for our boys for small motors is clay. Like most people, I mean, we use Play-Doh, but like if you give them real clay, it is tactilely different and it works different. So like what you were saying, real watercolors. Yes, I buy real watercolors for my toddler because that's something that she loves. But you have to, I don't buy 500 million different things. I just buy quality specific things, because if you buy the quality specific things, they'll last better. The kids will learn how to actually use real objects versus the toys. Like you can get them the pink stethoscope, but if you get them a real one, they'll actually learn how to use it, and it'll develop skills that they wouldn't have otherwise got if you would have bought only the toy kid friendly version.
yeah, the stethoscope, all of them ended up playing with it, and they learned that their gut made sounds, and that they could hear their lungs, and that they could hear, it became more than just, we're listening to a heartbeat, because there is legitimately a lot more that you can listen to with a stethoscope. And so that ended up opening up more schooling lessons.
And I think when Talitha was mentioning the pretend play before, like that's basically what it is you use that real stethoscope, you get the play silks, and yes, there's pretend, but at the same time, you're using those real things, and it enhances the play. You realize the heart and the guts do make that noise, and they are inspired by that.
Yeah, and the Charlotte Mason handicrafts, if you look that up, those are really wonderful. And she was a really big advocate for those things, of actually doing things that mattered. I mean, learning things like cross stitch. I had a daughter who, for her birthday, she wanted a dollhouse. And so instead of going out and getting her a plastic dollhouse, we got her one of the like wood ones that you piece together. And that sat on my dining room table for 2 months as we put it together. And it's just, that's a really wonderful thing. And yeah, get them the real stuff. And cooking, oh my goodness, your children can cook even at a young age. Your kids can cook. Your 6-year-old can make eggs. I promise you. They can follow a recipe. They can do it. Let them do it. And you know what? They're learning math. They're learning about culture. They can learn about geography. They can even learn about history. They can learn so many different things in opening a cookbook and cooking. Do it. Cook something.
Okay. That was a lot, guys. I hope that mama feels really well equipped. So we have 2 final questions, and then we're going to be done, I think, for tonight. When you have a schedule and things planned and organized, how do you keep from falling off track? I make a weekly schedule and keep things organized, but tend to fall off track within weeks/months. And then we fully adopt an unschooling schedule, which is fine, but I'd like to throw in a little organization. So I think it would be good to talk about schedules versus rhythms at this point. And then also when we do get off of our rhythm, how do we get back on track?
Yeah. I mean, this is like, you just described my life. I'll use a planner for a week, and then where's the planner? I don't know, somewhere in the car. See, Angela, I said that just to trigger her. But yeah, I for us, we really embrace a rhythm versus a schedule. So I'm not doing at 8:07 and a half, we're going to eat breakfast till 8:10. I don't do that. We do a rhythm. So a general outline essentially for our day, right? That's what we do. It's a general outline. And I call it rhythm, and then we have a cadence. So our rhythm is that general outline. And if we get off that rhythm, then we're going freestyle, and that's okay. We're going to embrace that freestyle. And our cadence has a lot to do with our scripture and that specific day stuff. But I have had times in my life where we have been like, when was the last time we did school? And you know what? Sometimes God calls us to rest, and those times are okay. Sometimes you just had a baby and you are in survival. Sometimes you live in Vermont and it's February and you haven't seen the sun for 6 weeks, and it's okay to watch documentaries and eat cookies, you know? And what we need to remember is, as scripture tells us, there is a time and a season. So sometimes we have seasons where we are really, and other times we have seasons where we are resting or we are following really our children. And I don't really have good advice. That's just what I'm saying. At this point in my life with homeschooling my children, getting one through college, is I just embrace it at this time. I don't even fight against it. I just embrace it, because to me, if I'm feeling so, and my kids are feeling so, oh, we have to do this, we have to get on our schedule, we have to do this, no one's learning anything, and we're just going to be frustrated. And so we don't. And that's us.
I just want to encourage, we as part of our parenting, just in general, outside of like education, we try to do family meetings with, and it's kind of like this formal meeting. It's not very long because our kids are really young, but we try to do the family meetings like every other week or so, just to kind of get feedback from our kids and kind of go over this week we're going to be doing this, and just kind of give them some basic expectations of, you know, this week we don't have co-op group, and so that might look a little bit different for the week. Or this week, you know, we have a couple appointments and, you know, we're going to be gone all day this day, so maybe we're going to do some stuff in the car, and just kind of keeping them in the know. So that, and it helps me too, because I'm not really much of a planner, so I need help planning, so my husband helps me with that. But that just kind of helps us stay on track a little bit, or get back on track if we haven't been on track. So that was something that's helped our family, is just having these family meetings. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
I would also, just to tag off that, invite your children to help create the schedule. Then it will become part of them and their desires. Like half the time, my kids are awake before I am in the morning, and they've already started learning something, reading their books, because they know that's their routine. They've decided that they want to do reading in the morning. So it's become habit that every morning is reading. So even if I'm not initiating, okay, we're going to sit down and do school, they're still on that rhythm that Bethany was talking about. It's that routine, but because they had a say in it, they're more likely to initiate it. And so it's not all on me to force them to learn. It's like doing it as a team. It's doing it together and figuring out that schedule together.
And I think that's how a lot of us parent too, right? We really want to connect and work with our kids. And so really that bleeds into our homeschool life. And we did talk about this question a bit, as you know, in our chat before. And, you know, these things, our schedules, our rhythms, are meant to encourage us and enhance our lives, not enslave us, right? And so it's like when you talk about Christianity and the rules and regulations that God puts out, it's not about legalism, it's about relationship, right? So and then our final question is, what do you do when you're having a rough day? So think about like resistance from any kind of education, resistance in general, or fighting, your kids fighting you, or your kids fighting each other. Like, what do you do when that's happening? When you're trying to homeschool, you're trying to get through things. Stop.
We drop it. We go outside. We go for a hike. We put on a documentary, put on a movie, not even a documentary sometimes, and just rest from that day. Because Bethany and everybody has basically said, when you are in that mind, you're not learning anything. It's just stress.
No, we stop. We put on worship music. Even if it's just background music, that changes the environment of my home so much. So there's almost always worship music playing in my home, and when there's not worship music, all of a sudden I realize that my entire house is chaotic, and I put it on and it changes everything. So worship music is my biggest weapon. But yeah, just stop, go for a walk, change the thing, forget it. We're not doing school today. We'll do it Saturday. Like, forget the schedule. Just stop.
We like to do a dance party. Like, I'm just like, you know what? We're taking a break. We're gonna be silly or do a dance party. In addition to going outside, we do a lot of that. Or take a break and eat a snack. Like sometimes it's just we need to eat. So
So remember, all behavior is communication. Um, so what is your child communicating to you through their resistance? Have you been doing too much table work? Is their brain not ready to process what you are trying to teach them? One of my favorite sayings is, you can struggle for months to try and teach a child their colors, but when they're ready to learn it, they'll learn it in a day. So identify what your child is teaching you, is trying to communicate to you through their resistance. Remember that kids do the best that they can with the tools that they have. So maybe, have you ever like been reading your Bible and all of the words just start like swimming on the page? Maybe your kid is at that point, but he doesn't have the language to tell you. So identify what they're communicating, give them the tools to communicate to you for in the future, coach them on that. And my favorite saying is, add water. Throw them in the bath, throw them in a pool, throw them. Today we were at a play date and it started raining and they played in the rain. So
I think that's some really, really good advice. And I also think like a lot of homeschoolers right now are coming from the public school system. So I think there's going to be there's going to be resistance from your kids. You're going from mom to teacher in a very short time in a pandemic, crazy, insane year world right now. So I think I think we need to give ourselves a lot of grace and our children a lot of grace. There's going to be learning curves. There's going to be big feelings. There's going to be lots and lots of expectations that we need to lower and change and adjust. So I think, that would kind of be as we finish up here. And a lot of people are asking about homeschooling because of all of this, everything that's going on. Virtual schooling for 7 hours is not going to work for most kids, right? And stuff like that. And so just giving yourself the grace and realizing that this is going to be, you're going to have resistance. This is different. You're not teacher, you're mom. And you shouldn't be teacher when you're homeschooling either, right? You should be helping your kids learn. There is a difference. So I'm going to ask Bethany to pray, and then we are going to finish up. And I actually think we hit all the questions, so we don't have to do a part 2. So there you go, guys. Thank you guys so much. Thank everyone for watching, and those who are going to watch on the replay. We are so excited that you watched. Feel free to send us in the NCM Facebook page or email, send us any other questions and we will respond to you. We also have an NCM homeschool group. Bethany has a free homeschool group, like she's homeschooling for free this year. Although she did buy some stuff from Amazon and Walmart, I'm just saying.
That's not curriculum. It's not curriculum.
Okay. So supplies don't count. But we are here to be a resource for you. So please, please, please reach out if you need help. Bethany, can you just finish up with a quick prayer and then we're all going to go to bed?
Yeah, absolutely. Father, we just thank you for this opportunity and the platform that we have to come and just sit down and have this conversation, Lord. God, I just pray for every single person who participated in this, who watched, who asked questions, who are going to watch the replay, Lord God. God, that they would really just truly look to you as their supplier, Lord God, and the one who's going to direct them in their home education of their children, Lord God, that ultimately that us as parents, that our goal for our children would just be to be worshipers and children who love you, Lord God, and that everything else will come after that. God, I would pray that you would continue to equip those who are stepping into homeschooling, that you would comfort them, that you would be with them, that they would realize that they are not alone, Lord God. God, that you would continue to bless NCM and using our voices to
I lost her. Did you guys lose her? Okay, well. All right, Nicole. Nicole, do you want to finish up praying?
Nope, she did good. Amen.
Amen.
Lord, so we just thank you. We bless everyone that was here, and we thank you for the incredible work.
I am so sorry because my phone died. I'm so sorry. In the middle of prayer. Hopefully you guys can hear me.
We can hear you. Lauren was finishing up.
What? Sorry. Say that one more
We're
time.
just gonna keep interrupting Claire.
My phone died. I was talking to you guys. My volume wasn't on. Did we get prayer at all or no?
We started, you were in the middle of it. So, but we're just going to finish it. We thank you, Jesus. We love you, Jesus.
Great. All right. Amen.